It's no longer morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Today is Budget Day at the Capitol, often a big and important day in the state legislature. We all talk about, regardless of what party you're from, as to how budgets are a reflection of your priorities and beliefs and where you think Connecticut should be going, what direction. All of us as Republicans, I stand here with the Republican members of the Appropriations Committee, were, I think, not surprised, but equally disappointed when we got our first look at the Democrats' budget last night. We're going to talk about that today, but let me just focus on a couple of main themes, and then we'll get more specific in our analysis of their budget. We all listened to our governor when he spoke about spending not one penny more this year than the enacted budget. Obviously, we've learned from our own nonpartisan Office of Fiscal Analysis that Governor Malloy's definition of not one penny more is different than the definition that the average person would have, because his budget itself is some $70 million in deficit and spends more money than was enacted. The Democrats, showing that they can actually outdo the governor, have increased spending over $100 million over the enacted budget. In a time when we're looking at future deficits, such spending increases is nothing short of irresponsible. This budget also increases the size of state government by adding over 400 new state employees. I believe it's 443 new state employees. And in addition to the burden that places on existing budgets, given the fact that we have one of the worst unfunded pension and health care liabilities in the country, here in the state of Connecticut, the additional burden that puts on future generations is uncalculated by this current Democrat majority. And lastly, despite the governor's claims to the contrary that Connecticut does not have deficits, we all know, and real people understand, that we are looking at billion-dollar budget deficits in the out year. And this budget only increases those deficits. That is fiscally irresponsible. We have not seen the economy rebound in Connecticut. In fact, if you look at where Connecticut's economy is in comparison to the nation, we are lagging. We know that people are still hurting and can't find jobs. Now is not the time to be increasing spending, increasing the size and scope of state government, and increasing our deficits in the future. In fact, it's time to do just the opposite.
It's interesting. Just yesterday, the governor was quoted as saying, "We're never going to be a low-tax state." Well, no kidding. You don't have to look any further than the blue books scattered around this room to find that out. The only way to pay for the continued spending that's taken place in this budget is through new taxes. So next year, when this time comes again, I guarantee you'll see new taxes as part of this budget process, because there's just no way we can fund these type of programs that are in here without the consistent revenue that the state of Connecticut just doesn't see. So when he says we're never going to be a low-tax state, I finally found something I agree with him on. If you look at the budget that was enacted, this governor increased it by over $30 million. And the way he did that was what Representative Claridis talked about, was moving items away from the general fund expenditures into very specific funds, like the insurance fund or banking fund or transportation fund, things like that. That doesn't mean a lot to a whole lot of people, except if you're on the committee, of course. But what it does mean is he tries to show, and this legislature, quite honestly, tries to show that spending has not increased, but in a way that's not truthful. It has. When you also talk about borrowing for operating expenses, and when you talk about the new hires that Senator McKinney mentioned, there's growth happening in the state of Connecticut's government and in the programs that they present, but not in the economy. And that's the part that really scares me. When the governor gave his speech a year ago or so and talked about gap accounting and we're moving towards gap, this is about the opposite of that. None of these practices or policies that have been instituted in this budget are gap compliant. In fact, I would argue the reverse. This budget is not truthful. It's an illusion. It's a gimmick, a trick, a deception. And we have to be honest with the people of the state of Connecticut when we're doing our budgeting process. Senator McKinney talked about the budget as the policy document for the state legislature in the state of Connecticut. That's true. It is. It is our number one policy in the state of Connecticut. And if we can't have honesty there, then how can we have honesty in any other committee?